On paper, it reads like the kindest, most generous gift the tennis calendar has ever handed a returning champion. Jannik Sinner, the man who spent 4 brutal months turning Carlos Alcaraz's forced absence into an absolute, uncontested coronation, has just withdrawn from the 2026 US Open. Injured, gone, erased from the bracket. The single largest obstacle standing between Alcaraz and the top of the tennis world has voluntarily removed itself from the draw before Alcaraz has even bounced a ball or laced up his shoes for a single competitive point in Flushing Meadows. To the casual fan, this looks like fortune smiling down on a legendary comeback story. The fierce rival who ran away with Wimbledon, while Alcaraz sat in a Barcelona rehab room watching his career pause, is no longer standing in his way. The mountain has flattened. The road to the trophy just got shorter, cleaner, and undeniably easier. But step inside the locker room, and nobody is calling this a gift. They are calling it a trap. Because when you hand a 23-year-old an empty throne, instead of making him fight to tear it away from a reigning king, you do not just remove an opponent. You remove an excuse. You remove a measuring stick, and you replace both of them with something far heavier. The full, undivided, suffocating weight of global expectation, resting entirely on a right wrist that has not survived a single high-intensity competitive rally in over 4 long months. So is this truly the easiest path back to world number 1 that Carlos Alcaraz will ever be handed? Or is it secretly the most dangerous, psychologically volatile setup of his entire professional career? To understand why this withdrawal feels more like a landmine than a doorway, you have to rewind the tape to late April. To Barcelona, to a routine afternoon match where nobody initially realized the sport was about to shift on its axis. That is where the wrist gave out. It was a tendon sheath injury. Not catastrophic on paper, not the kind of tear that ends a career outright, but utterly brutal in its timing. It arrived at the exact moment Alcaraz was building momentum toward what many analysts expected to be the defining clay and grass stretch of his prime. What followed was not a brief pause or a quiet couple of weeks on the sidelines. It was a total erasure. Madrid, gone. Rome, gone. Roland Garros, the absolute crown jewel of the clay swing. The tournament where Alcaraz had played what commentators called the match of the decade just 1 year prior. Gone entirely. Then, Queen's Club vanished from his calendar. And finally, Wimbledon, the golden trophy he had defended twice with astonishing swagger, slipped away without him for the first time since 2021. While Alcaraz disappeared into dark treatment rooms, ice baths, and endless diagnostic scans, professional tennis did not wait politely for his health to return. The tour kept moving at full speed, and Jannik Sinner turned that massive structural vacancy into an absolute stranglehold. Sinner did not just fill the vacuum, he devoured it. He defended Wimbledon back-to-back, virtually unchallenged on the grass courts Alcaraz had briefly claimed as his private domain. He racked up points, titles, and confidence, building a mountain of a lead at the top of the ATP rankings that faced zero resistance, without Alcaraz applying pressure from the other side of the draw. For 4 full months, Sinner was not just winning tennis matches. He was rewriting the fundamental hierarchy of men's tennis in real time, and Alcaraz could do nothing but watch it unfold from a television screen. That unstoppable, hyper-efficient version of Sinner was the monster Alcaraz was bracing himself to face in New York. The undisputed world number 1. The machine who had made the sport look routine, while his biggest rival was rebuilding a delicate wrist joint in near silence. And now, that monster has walked away. The draw has cleared out. The path to the final is open. Here is where the story stops being simple, because in professional sports, a walkover is never the same thing as a victory. When Sinner withdrew, he did not hand Alcaraz a hardware trophy to take home to Murcia. He handed him a giant, burning spotlight with absolutely nowhere left to hide. For 4 full months, every difficult question surrounding Alcaraz's form, physical condition, and career trajectory came neatly wrapped in protective context. Of course he's rusty. He hasn't played in months. Of course he isn't sharp yet. Just wait until he faces real top 5 competition to calibrate his game. Wait until he plays Sinner. That protective context just evaporated into thin air. If Alcaraz stumbles now, if he drops a messy 4-setter to a crafty qualifier, or loses his cool against a big server in the second week of a Grand Slam draw, completely stripped of its top seed. There is no dominant rival to point to. There are no excuses left to shield him. There is only Carlos, his healing wrist, and a lightning-fast hardcourt inside Arthur Ashe Stadium that remembers precisely how explosive he used to move when his body was unbroken. The eternal optimists in his coaching box will tell you this is precisely the kind of break legendary champions dream of getting. A lighter early week through the draw, fewer brutal 4-hour marathons against elite baseline defenders, and extra match play to find his rhythm before he has to face someone capable of truly punishing a hesitant forehand. History actually supports a piece of that optimistic theory. Alcaraz has never needed long stretches of time to remember how to be dangerous. His hard-court instincts, spatial awareness, and shot-making reflex have historically returned far faster than his clay court timing ever has. Give him 3 rounds of winning ugly, the optimists argue, and he will look like a world beater by the quarterfinals. But history also carries a dark, explicit warning that the optimists always tend to skip over. An open draw does not remove structural danger from a tournament. It simply reorganizes it. Without Sinner's terrifying name looming over the top half of the bracket, the dangerous floaters, unseeded veterans, and hungry young hardcourt specialists now see a completely different tournament. Players who usually step onto the court against elite seeds, expecting to lose, suddenly smell blood in the water. They spent the entire summer sharpening the exact style of hyper-aggressive, first-strike tennis designed to test, probe, and exploit an untested wrist. They have every financial and professional incentive to throw caution to the wind early, knowing the man they feared facing at full strength isn't walking through the tunnel this year. Look at Alexander Zverev. Fresh off claiming his first elusive major title in Paris, Zverev looks across a US Open draw with no Sinner and an undercooked, rehabbed Alcaraz standing between him and a run of hard-court dominance he has never had the chance to control before. Look at the dangerous, big-serving dark horses who suddenly realize the door to a Grand Slam final isn't locked from the inside anymore. The pressure doesn't leave the building. It simply spreads across every single court, making early-round matches infinitely more volatile. Beyond the physical draw and the tactical matchups, there is a quieter, far more psychological cost buried inside all of this. Great rivalries do not just produce thrilling matches and silver trophies. They produce athletic identity. For 2 straight years, Carlos Alcaraz's entire competitive narrative has been shaped by the presence of one specific man on the other side of the net. 5-hour physical wars in the heat, impossible saved match points, electric court coverage, and a generational duel that commentators rightfully compared to Federer and Nadal at their absolute peak. If you take that man out of the equation, a potential title win in New York stops being an undisputed statement about who the single best tennis player on planet Earth is. It morphs into something far murkier. It becomes a victory, with an invisible, lingering asterisk attached to it. An asterisk that only Alcaraz himself will feel in his core, regardless of what the record books say. Ask any multi-time Grand Slam champion privately when the cameras are turned off, and most will confess the exact same uncomfortable truth. Beating an empty draw never silences the internal or external doubters the way standing toe-to-toe and conquering your fiercest rival does. Sinner's sudden absence does not just remove Alcaraz's toughest physical test. It robs him of the ultimate platform to prove, in front of the entire sports world, that 4 long months of injury and silence changed nothing about who commands this era when both men are healthy. That is the true, crushing weight sitting on Carlos Alcaraz's shoulders as he walks out under the bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium this fortnight. It is not the familiar pressure of facing Jannik Sinner across the net. It is the eerie, suffocating pressure of not facing him and having to convince an entire global sport that a trophy lifted over an empty field means every bit as much as one fought for in the mud. So here is the fundamental question this entire tournament will answer: whether Alcaraz marches through the field to lift the trophy or falls in a dramatic third-round shocker to a player nobody saw coming. Can a champion truly build, or rebuild, an empire on a court his primary rival never showed up to defend? If Alcaraz plays clean, dominant, breathtaking tennis and sweeps through Flushing Meadows untroubled, the tennis world will remember this fortnight as the moment he proved his true genius was never dependent on Sinner standing across the net to pull it out of him. But if he stumbles, if his forehand breaks down under pressure, if his wrist hesitates on a crucial break point, against a lesser name in a draw that was scripted to be his seamless grand entry. The lingering questions surrounding his health, his rhythm, and his long-term readiness will ring out louder and harsher than they ever would have if Sinner had simply outplayed him in a 5-set final. An empty throne is still a throne, but sitting on one and actually ruling from one have never been the same thing in men's tennis. Was Jannik Sinner's withdrawal the miracle break Carlos Alcaraz needed to jumpstart his career? Or is it the ultimate psychological trap that will expose just how fragile his comeback really is? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is this a gift or a trap? If you enjoyed this deep dive analysis into the hidden storylines shaping this year's US Open, hit the like button, leave your thoughts, and subscribe for more in-depth tennis coverage all tournament long.